Hulk is undoubtedly one of the most popular superheroes ever created, rivaling the likes of both Wolverine and Spider-Man in Marvel's early days. But as time has progressed, we've seen a massive shift in Hulk's popularity. The once powerful and fierce character that was the Hulk has now become the weak and laughable giant in the MCU, creating the downfall for what once was an icon for many of us at a young age. But to understand why everything went wrong, we have to go back to where it all began. The year is 2008. Shortly after the release of Iron Man, we would be introduced to the Hulk. Now, this film is often forgotten about for many different reasons, from a lackluster story to the actor being replaced as a whole. It's no mistake why this movie is overlooked when thinking about the 40+ projects in the MCU. But what if I told you this movie was the best portrayal of the Hulk we have gotten in this cinematic universe? Some of you may disagree at first, but hopefully we can all come to an agreement by the end of this. Now, The Incredible Hulk had high hopes. Not only did it have to live up to Iron Man 1, but it also had to live up to the studio's expectations. They wanted a good return on investment, and so they began looking for the best actor to take on this role, until they would stumble upon Edward Norton, a very talented and respected actor for the time. But even with Marvel's confidence in Norton, this casting would quickly prove to cause problems, as Norton told the studio that he would only play this role if he was given free reign over the creative process of the film, ensuring that the story was being told in the best way possible. Though this would ultimately cause problems in the future. Marvel wanted a box office hit, and so they gave Norton the creative freedom he asked for, allowing him to rewrite multiple parts of the story. But unfortunately, he was only given a short period of time to do so, not allowing him to craft the story that he so badly wanted to tell, causing for the script to turn out poorly.
I did a big action movie called The Incredible Hulk. You know what went wrong? I wanted a better script.
This issue in itself would kill the film's opportunity of any real success early on. But that isn't to say the movie was completely ruined, because like I said before, this is and likely will always be the best iteration of the Hulk that we've seen in the MCU. But given all the flaws, how can that even be? Well, the biggest factor is simply staying true to the character. Now, I'm not saying this version of the Hulk is perfect by any means, as with every iteration of the character, there are bound to be some flaws. But something Marvel gets right with this movie is staying true to the character. From the immediate start, we see Banner on the run, figuring himself out and trying his best to be normal, while simultaneously hiding from his past. Sure enough, it doesn't work, causing us to be reintroduced to the green guy early on. And man, this guy is menacing. From the way he looks to the way he acts, he's just a force to be reckoned with, ultimately giving us this powerful and fierce character that I was talking about from the start. But this was only the beginning. The Hulk's introduction wouldn't have been nearly as rewarding if it wasn't paired with these dark undertones, something this film really takes interest in, giving us arguably the darkest film in the entire MCU. I mean, this film at one point was so dark that they had to completely cut a scene from the beginning of the movie. While I understand why they cut this scene, it's still really powerful. It shows that Bruce's abilities are more of a curse than anything else. So much of a curse that he doesn't even want to go on anymore. But even with that scene being cut, we still get the sense that Bruce is cursed throughout the entire film. And while this isn't fully Disney's thing with their movies, doing stuff like this allows for us to really feel for the character. It creates this sense of relatability between us and them. And even though these things would never happen in real life, it still shows that these heroes aren't perfect. Their world is just as dark as ours. But sadly enough, stuff like this really seems to be lacking in the current day MCU, causing countless problems for many fans, myself included. And while 2008's Hulk isn't perfect by any means, there's still some things the film got right. One of those things being Betty Ross. Now, this film actually gave us a believable romance, not something I can say about Hulk and Black Widow's relationship. The real issue that I have between them is the fact that it's a bit random and unnatural, and it just all around lacks a ton of depth. Betty Ross never gave off that vibe. Things felt natural and had real depth. You could actually feel the connection between the two, leaving many of us hoping for her return in the MCU, giving us what we once had. But relationships aside, the villain for this film wasn't half bad either. While he is a simplistic character, he still had an understandable reason for becoming the villain. And the best part of it all, he brought out this version of the Hulk that we all want, giving us a very brutal and intense fight between the two. And if I'm being honest, some of the current day MCU fights don't even compare to this. Stuff like this is few and far between, really showing what we once had. But aside from everything great this film has done, there are some flaws that can't be ignored. As one issue some people have with this film was the fact that Hulk himself did not look like Bruce Banner at all, something that was later adopted with Mark Ruffalo in the future films. Now, this is an understandable gripe. Both characters accompany the same body, so at the end of the day, they should look alike. They shouldn't look like two completely different people. This was mainly an issue because the design for the Hulk was created before the casting of Edward Norton, so in turn they decided to continue on with their current design and stay ahead of schedule. And while this problem isn't the end of the world, the next issue slightly ruined the character for some. That issue would be Bruce's intelligence. Many felt as though his intelligence wasn't well represented enough in this film, something that once again changed with this character moving forward. But the biggest issue of them all was Edward Norton himself. His ambitions and hopes for the film weren't met with the same energy by the studio. Kevin Feige had a different vision for the future of the Hulk, ultimately causing conflict between the two until Banner would be recast entirely, beginning the downfall for the character moving forward. But with all of these things in mind, we can now focus on what created his downfall. Now, I'd say Hulk progressively got worse after his 2008 debut, but that's not to say he was awful in everything moving forward, as if we're being completely honest, he's not terrible at all until Avengers Infinity War, with some issues in between. But what would those issues be? Well, the first Avengers film would be Hulk's next appearance after his initial recast, not drifting too far from the character we were first introduced with. We still had this fierce and scary character, while keeping some of Banner's dark undertones.
The cell was just
In case you needed to kill me, but you can't. I know, I tried. I got low. I didn't see an end, so I put a bullet in my mouth and the other guy spit it out.
And while that clip is great, there isn't really a whole lot to complain about in this film. They stayed fairly consistent with the character that we were first introduced to. From lashing out at times to taking down a massive Leviathan with a single punch, he still feels like this dangerous character from the first movie. But even with this film's minimal flaws, there's bound to be several mistakes moving forward, leading us to the next project with the Hulk, Age of Ultron. This movie, just like the first Avengers, has very few issues with the Jade Giant, besides one. That one issue being Hulk's fight with Iron Man. I have a lot of issues with this part of the film. The first one being, why did they make Hulk so weak? Why does Iron Man ever stand a chance in this fight? And most of all, how does he win? I understand that Tony created a special suit for this exact scenario, but that shouldn't have been some easy fix to take down the Hulk. Hulk doesn't go down with ease, and he doesn't go down without his opponent fearing for their life. Especially someone like Tony, who was just a normal guy in a suit. Like, why isn't Tony scared? Why isn't he afraid of losing his life? He treats this entire fight like an inconvenience, throwing around quips and jokes mid-fight. Tony knows Hulk is dangerous, especially when he's being mind-controlled, and even if you can argue that Tony isn't afraid because he's just a G, or that he's chilling because of his Hulkbuster suit, it still at the end of the day makes his character look weak, at least weaker than he should be perceived. If they didn't want to show fear in Tony during this fight, a simple fix could have been adding more characters to help. This is how things should have gone in the first place. There should have been multiple people trying to contain the Hulk, not just one. This would have not only made the Hulk look more dangerous, but it also would have really shown that this character isn't who you want to mess with, the exact thing this character is known for. And what I really don't understand is why Hulk couldn't receive this treatment. Iron Man got this exact same thing in Civil War. We see both Winter Soldier and Captain America taking on Tony in a 2v1. Though Tony would ultimately lose this fight, it really showed that he is stronger than we think, that he is not someone you can just beat with ease. It took an unfair fight with him almost winning to show this character's true strength. But no, Hulk doesn't deserve that. He deserves to be knocked out by a playboy billionaire in a suit. And even after destroying an entire city, we never talk about what the Hulk did. No word from any of the Avengers, nobody punishing him, nobody being fearful of him. Even if it wasn't his fault because of Wanda's mind control, there's still no consequences for his actions. It's just forgotten about because, hey, the plot is more important. And I say that as a partial joke because these movies are truly amazing, don't get me wrong. I love just about everything leading up to Endgame, but it's so sad to see a favorite character of mine being sidelined for the plot on a continual basis. And worst of all, this is really only the start. By this point, there hasn't really been a ton to be upset about, even with the minimal flaws of the first two Avengers films. But Thor Ragnarok would prove to cause a lot more issues for his character, and that sucks, because I really love this movie. It's seriously one of the better things to come out of Phase 3, but that doesn't mean we ignore the flaws that it has. Those flaws begin mainly with the portrayal of the Hulk. Now, this movie brought high hopes for a lot of comic fans, as they hinted at the coolest comic series for this character, Planet Hulk and World War Hulk, heavily inspiring their decisions for this movie. Now, for those who don't know, I'm going to give you a quick rundown for that series. In these comics, the Hulk is sent off to a planet called Sakaar, the same planet where we see him in the film. But instead of Hulk just accidentally showing up there, in the comics he is sent by the Illuminati, a similar group to the one we saw in the Multiverse of Madness. Now, they tricked the Hulk into leaving Earth, Earth, as they were afraid of him and deemed him as a serious threat to the world. At this point, you can already see the similarities between the comics and the film, but this is where things become even more similar. While Hulk is on Sakaar, he is forced to fight for the Grand Master, and of course he dominates as the Hulk should. But also in the comics, instead of Thor showing up to help the Hulk escape, he's alone, left to make new friends on his own. And in doing so, he comes across a woman, one that he would eventually make his wife. But in doing so, he would dismantle the Grand Master and run this planet himself, until things began to take a very drastic turn. The ship that Hulk was sent on had a nuclear missile that was made to blow, completely destroying everyone around the Hulk, including his wife, bringing everything back full circle for him. He showed up alone and would ultimately leave alone. This is where the Hulk would begin seeking revenge on the Illuminati for taking everything away from him. This would create a Hulk that we've never seen before, one that's filled with so much rage that nobody, and I mean nobody, could stop him. He would then find himself back on Earth, causing complete havoc to the heroes who betrayed him, taking on the Avengers and the Illuminati like it's nothing. Not even a Hulkbuster suit could stop him, nor could multiple heroes at once. And most of all, Hulk literally shatters the entire planet with a single hit, giving him the title Worldbreaker Hulk. Now, I don't want to reveal everything in this comic series, as there's so much that goes on, with an especially interesting twist at the end. I really just wanted everyone to get an idea for these comics, considering that Thor Ragnarok was lightly based off of this series. It just really goes to show what we got versus what we could have got. Besides that, I really suggest reading these comics, as it's such an amazing series with a Hulk that we will likely never get to see on the big screen. But let's not get distracted for the rest of the video. Now that we all know the comics and have seen Thor Ragnarok, we can dissect everything that went wrong with this film. My first issue would have to be the humor, and you might say, hey, I love this movie, it's hilarious, it's awesome, it's fun, but like, what did they do to my man?
Naked. He's very naked. That's in my brain now.
Why do we have my man walking around ass naked, and what's with all the jokes?
I won't hurt you anymore.
You get the point. Why does he go from a vicious beast to a big baby within 10 minutes of the movie? I can tell you why. Jokes are more important than character building. Hulk is only here to play off of Thor, to show Thor's true power and entertain everyone while doing so. And I understand this is Thor's movie, but why are we bringing down the Hulk at the expense of that? We go from the hints of a really great comic series to immediate comedic relief, and it sucks. You may think it's not the end of the world, it's just one movie, and it's a great one at that. But nah, it's not just one movie. There's so much more that we have yet to talk about. But even ignoring the comedic relief, let's just focus on my next issue, Hulk's weakness. And when I say that, I'm really just referring to his fight with Thor, the one that he ultimately loses when Thor unlocks his true potential. I understand why and how he won, but as you may have noticed, these issues are far bigger than just one situation at hand. Hulk's weakness goes much deeper than just that one fight. So at the end of the day, even if you think Hulk deserved to lose this fight, it still needs to be acknowledged when looking at the overarching problem, which leads us to Infinity War, the film that completely changed everything for this character. At this point of the MCU, things begin to really ramp up. This was and still is regarded as the best Marvel movie ever made amongst so many people, and can you blame them? This movie is perfection in so many ways, from the villain to the almost flawless story. There isn't really a whole lot to complain about, until we look at the Hulk. Now, at this point throughout the MCU, we have seen him in multiple projects, but this movie most of all, he's completely unrecognizable from his initial debut film. The studio we praised from the start for staying true to the character's roots has completely lost their way. And for what? Hulk is ultimately sacrificed in this film for the story. His character is a literal stepping stone for this film's big bad villain. This right here was the scene that killed off the Hulk, because even when we see him in future projects, he's just not the same. But we'll get into that in a little bit. For now, let's just talk about this Thanos fight for a second. Now, I know not everyone will agree with me, but Hulk does not lose to Thanos. He just doesn't. At least, not the Hulk that I know. Ask anyone, read any comic for the most part, Thanos does not defeat the Hulk. But the Russo brothers had a different story to tell. They had to craft the most anticipated superhero movie to ever come out, and one of the most important parts of that movie is the villain. And how do you make this villain scary and strong? You have to have him beat one of the strongest Avengers there is with ease. Dude didn't even use the Power Stone, he just didn't need it. But worst of all, this fight was a joke for him.
Let him have his fun.
So not only was this fight easy, but it was also just him having fun. Do you not realize how disrespectful this is? Hulk is supposed to be one of the most powerful superheroes ever, yet dude was knocked out in sub 60 seconds. But hey, we have a story to tell and a villain to build. Who cares if we destroy a main character? That's not what matters. We can sideline a character once or twice without it being a real big deal, right? Well, even after this monumental scene from the film, they can make up for it moving forward, is what some of us may have thought when watching. Unfortunately, we couldn't have been more wrong. After humiliating our character, they go on to strip him of all of his glory, completely getting rid of Hulk and just leaving us with Banner. An interesting choice to say the least. And if I'm being honest, I don't like the reasoning. Hulk just doesn't want to come out anymore because he's embarrassed of losing? Or wait, that's not the real reason.
Banner only want Hulk for fighting! So what?
There's the reason, but there's still a massive issue with this scene. It's just dumb. You're telling me the Hulk is just gonna sit by while all of his friends and innocent people die? That just isn't the character that we know. Even in the World War Hulk comics, during all of his destruction and mayhem, he still protects innocent people. I just don't see the Hulk not caring in the MCU. But even if we ignore that, let's just focus on my next big issue. Why is comedy all that Marvel cares about? Like, I could seriously make an entire video dedicated to this one question. That's just how bad it is. Why does Marvel try so hard to make us laugh when it's just completely unnecessary and forced half the time? Why is a scene like this even a thing?
Oh, this is amazing, man! It's like being the Hulk, not actually.
Ignoring the terrible CGI, was this really how we should have written the character? Bruce is going through something he's never been through before. The amount of frustration and confusion that he must be feeling is insane, yet we see none of this. Instead, let's just laugh at him. It's even more sad when you see the deleted scene of the Hulk and Bruce arguing.
Banner hate Hulk! I don't hate you! You're more an Avenger than I am! I love you! No, you don't!
The scene would have ended with them solving their differences and having the Hulk bust out of the suit. This would have been the best character moment of the movie. But instead it was removed, and I'm not entirely sure why. It just really seems like the Russo brothers dropped the ball with this one. They may have told a compelling story that we'll never forget, but they destroyed a character in the process. I'm not even sure why they chose this route, especially considering how the Hulk was in the Infinity War trailer, and still to this day is on the front of the thumbnail. It's almost like they didn't know what they wanted to do with him until the last second. But Infinity War aside, this isn't where the issues end. Things actually get much worse in Endgame. Now, Endgame is another fantastic movie. I really can't complain about a whole lot unless, again, we're talking about the Hulk. This may be the part of the video where some of you start disagreeing, as I'm personally not the biggest fan of Professor Hulk, at least the way he's portrayed in the MCU. I don't know much about Professor Hulk from the comics, so I can't really speak on his character, but personally, traditional Hulk is just better. I mean, the literal appeal to Hulk is that he is split between two people, and the second you take that away, he becomes a less interesting character. But what's even less interesting is the fact that this character was created behind closed doors. Why in the world are we not seeing these massive character breakthroughs during the film? It's so much less meaningful when you just say, hey, this happened, enjoy. It's just a lazy and terrible way to build up the character, and sadly enough, this mistake happens far too often. Like, why after forcing Banner and Hulk into one, do they completely strip that away in the Shang-Chi end credit scene? Where's the explanation for why Bruce is back to normal? Did Marvel not want to pay for the CGI Professor Hulk? Was that why they did this? But jokes aside, these are just a few examples of many. I get that a massive combined universe full of hundreds of characters can get messy, but why are we crafting moments in the story that make completely no sense? Or even worse, crafting moments that have a ton of importance but with zero weight behind them? Like, Marvel, why is Hulk solving his biggest problem yet behind closed doors? What was the thought process there? Where's the respect that this character deserves? But even looking past that, if you still like Professor Hulk, Marvel continually fails to write a cohesive character. This new version of the Hulk is supposed to be a combination of the two, Banner and Hulk's body. But at the end of the day, it's just Banner. We no longer hear or see from the Hulk again, not even during scenes where it would make sense. Like, what's with him smashing things like a 5-year-old? And what's with Marvel mocking the guy? He can't even look at his past self without being embarrassed. It's just sad. This is the exact reason why I say they killed Hulk off. He's not really a thing anymore. The character we love is gone, and we're supposed to just smile and enjoy our new version of the Hulk, even when they're making a complete joke out of him. Like, let's watch him eat pancakes and dab because it's funny.
Hulk out! Damn.
Jokes aside, I still had high hopes for this film, even after several times of cringing. I had one massive hope for this movie, and it was the hope that Hulk would get his revenge on Thanos, that he would finally prove himself in the end. But, as if the Russo brothers weren't finished with destroying his character, they had to excuse his little to no appearance in the finale of the film. His excuse? A damaged arm from the snap. Apparently, the character that always heals and always comes back from things was just too injured to perform when needed. So instead of Hulk getting his own rematch with Thanos, we get to see literally every other Avenger getting hits on him. Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, and even Captain Marvel. Instead of Hulk getting some real spotlight, we're given a few seconds of him saying the most moronic stuff possible.
Get those stones as far away as possible! No! We need to get them back where they came from.
Why is bro saying to bring the stones back to where they came from in the middle of an all-out war? They haven't even won yet. But even after that stupidity, we don't even see the guy during the most important scene of the movie. Like, where is he during Iron Man's death? Why do we see everyone but him? The Russo brothers actually forgot about this guy. I'm genuinely convinced they just don't know what they're doing with him, and I'm sick of how underappreciated the Hulk is. There's no love being put into this character. I just don't understand why they can't get him right. Why can't they just hire the writers and creatives from Earth's mightiest heroes? They crafted such an amazing version of the Jade Giant, giving us a perfect dynamic between both Hulk and Bruce. It's no wonder comic book fans prefer animated projects over live action. For some reason, the creatives on animated projects are given more freedom and have more passion when crafting their stories. Something that's really lacking when we look at some of the most recent MCU projects, like with She-Hulk. This series is arguably the worst Marvel project that I have ever watched, and I've seen Ghost Rider 2. But Ghost Rider aside, She-Hulk is just unbelievably bad, and unfortunately they had to include Hulk in this atrocity. Instead of getting a second Hulk movie, we get this shit. Which would you rather have? Because I can promise anyone who's seen this show would way rather have gotten a second Hulk movie. But unfortunately, that's not an option, as Universal loves doing absolutely nothing with their Hulk rights. I mean, Mark Ruffalo said it best.
A standalone Hulk movie will never happen. Because Universal has the rights to the standalone Hulk movie, and for some reason, they don't know how to play well with Marvel. And they don't want to make money.
Luckily enough, Universal's rights for this character are supposedly expired last June, so hopefully we'll see a second film for him sometime in the near future. But until then, we're left with what we've got, and that's She-Hulk. Now, this show, like Hulk's last few appearances, does more harm than good, and it's mainly because of She-Hulk herself. I just don't understand why the sole purpose of the show is to put Hulk down just to bring the main character up. It's almost like this is becoming a common occurrence. Like, why are we even getting scenes like this?
So, I'm an expert at controlling my anger because I do it infinitely more than you. So all of this just feels like projecting a lot of shit onto me.
What is she even saying? Are we even talking about the same character? Who in the writer's room thought that this was a banger? Because they honestly need to be out of a job. The sheer amount of ignorance that you have to make a comment like that. I seriously cannot express to you how shocked I was hearing that line for the first time watching. The series has far more issues than I'd like to discuss. Really, the only thing this show did good was set up a possible storyline involving Hulk in the future, that being World War Hulk. Although I'm uncertain if any of that will ever happen. We'll just have to wait and see. Now, at this point in the video, we've covered a handful of issues surrounding the Hulk, but if any of you have noticed, there has been 3 major reoccurring ones throughout the MCU. The first one being the underutilization and misusage of the Hulk. He's only used when the Avengers need help. He's basically just this muscle for when some world-ending event happens, and while that may not be an issue for some, it really kills the serious moments for this character. He goes from being a main character to just someone who shows up when aliens invade New York. The other Avengers, for the most part, received a ton of character building, while being given a TV show or several movies. Hulk has only received 1 film, and I know it's not the MCU's fault for that, but even with all of his appearances, he's mainly there to punch someone or something. And worst of all, that didn't even last long. We only got that version of the Hulk for a few movies. Now we're left with this soft green giant, so even if you enjoyed his rampages, they've clearly come to an end. He's now mainly used for comedic relief at the expense of his character. Leading us to the second issue, Hulk being used for laughs. Now, Hulk is very rarely given serious character moments that aren't played off for laughs or wow factors, creating a character that cannot be taken seriously. And while this isn't just an issue with the Hulk, it often feels more detrimental to his character compared to others. You can't completely strip a character of all the things that people liked in the first place and then make a mockery of it all in the process. Like, the man is already down, why do we gotta kick him while he's there? But on top of that, why do we have to make one of the smartest characters in the MCU look so stupid? You're telling me it's hard for him to say Wakanda?
Wakanda.
It's things like this that make you cringe and wonder what in the world were the writers thinking. And worst of all, we got scenes like this.
You were kidding, right?
I have no idea, man. We're talking about time travel here. Either it's all a joke or none of it is. We're good.
How can Hulk be so careless? Everything about this character is just used for laughs. Hulk used to be this fierce animal that had a really interesting character dynamic. And worst of all, we only got to see this version of the character for a movie or few, before everything went downhill. I really wish I could say that it was just one movie that ruined this character, but it's not. The third issue is Hulk being sacrificed for the story. Now, Hulk has been through a lot at this point, but fortunately enough, we have the worst problem of them all. Not only is the Hulk used like trash, and for laughs, he's also sacrificed for the story on countless occasions. From losing to Iron Man to being defeated by Thanos, the examples are plentiful. This character has been used more than once to lift others up, and every single time it's at the expense of himself. You can't let one of the strongest characters in the MCU be beaten multiple times with no consequence. It's only a matter of time before everyone thinks he's this weak man in a giant's body. And sadly enough, we're already at this point. Like, where's the character that can take on Wolverine?
Hulk is strongest there is!
Where is this character? Is it that difficult to ask for the bare minimum? We're at the point where nobody takes this character seriously. Nobody views him as a threat. The once lovable and thought out character is no more. He's become an outcast amongst characters that receive infinitely more attention. And if I'm being honest, I don't have high hopes for the future. The amount of damage that's been done would take several films and TV shows to recorrect. And I just don't see Marvel accomplishing something like that. The last few years have been extremely rough for us MCU fans, with what seems like no end in sight. So I just don't have high hope for this character. But maybe someone like Kevin Feige can prove me wrong. Maybe he'll recognize the mistreatment this character has received and flip things around, because this character truly deserves so much more.